Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my homeowner association called the cops on me for having a so-called illegal structure in my garden. This structure is actually a playhouse for my disabled son. Let me show you how I taught them a lesson about not messing with the ADA. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the story. I don't think anything can truly describe the joy a parent feels the first time they get to see their baby. The first time I saw my son Ryan, I was the happiest I had been my entire life. However, when he was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, I felt worry of the same magnitude. My wife and I never loved him any less, but our lives have been a series of ups and downs ever since the disease got worse, but Ryan has always been a fighter. It was never easy watching him struggle to walk when other children his age would run around the playground. It definitely helps that the people around us are generally very supportive. The neighborhood we moved into 2 years back is mostly filled with amazing people. For Ryan's 5th birthday, they all chipped in to have a surprise party with activities that specially able children would enjoy. They even took special care to make sure that the music played during the party would not trigger sensory overload. There is another kid, Timmy, who also happened to be specially abled and bound to a wheelchair, so we found ourselves growing close to his family. Ryan had finally found a friend who truly got him, but of course it goes without saying that there are downsides too. The homeowner association of our neighborhood was made of people who were slightly ableist. It infuriated them whenever the rest of the neighborhood gave us any kind of special attention. They did not like that we had a parking spot reserved at the local grocery store. They claimed that it should be reserved for drivers who are disabled, not passengers. Not that even a disabled driver would have stopped them from using the spot whenever they pleased. The president of the HOA, Hansen, happened to stay right next door to us, and he grew increasingly bitter every time the rest of the residents made a kind gesture for Ryan. They did not particularly like Timmy either. The HOA has strict rules when it comes to pets. The process of getting permission to have a pet was long and tedious. It easily took a month to complete all the silly steps they had implemented. They dragged away a service dog that Timmy's family had adopted and sent her to the pound simply because they had not signed off on the pet application before they got her. Just next week, the secretary of the HOA got a very annoying chihuahua that barked all the time, and no one asked her to get permission from anybody. They seemed to go out of their way to be an inconvenience to anyone who was not a member of the association. Even the elderly were not spared. It was no surprise that the entire neighborhood had grown very wary of them. We tolerated them, but the last straw was when they tried to demolish the small playhouse we built for Ryan to help with his cerebral palsy. It was a small space in the backyard that fit into the conventions of a treehouse. The room had toys that were safe for Ryan to play with and learn. We then spent a good amount of time painting it in colors that he finds comforting. It was a temporary construction, so the room was up in no time at all. A major portion of the room was dedicated to the physical rehab section to help Ryan improve his motor functions. We were certain that this would finally help him walk without having to put in tremendous effort. Considering we live right next to the president of the HOA, it certainly did not go unnoticed. There was no way they did not see while we were setting the playroom up, but they only seemed to have a problem with it after we finished construction. We invited Timmy's parents over to help finish painting the outer walls. The boys could even play together during the time we were completing this task. Everything was going fine until we heard police sirens outside the house. I was curious about why the police had shown up at our neighborhood, considering it's a relatively safe area. When I looked out of the window to watch what was happening, I was surprised to see the police officer walk towards our front door. I was still under the impression that they had made a mistake when I heard a knock. I opened the door calmly, fully convinced that they meant to go to some other house, but to my astonishment, the officer informed me that someone had placed a complaint about an unpermitted, dangerous structure in my backyard. I knew it must have been Hansen who placed a complaint straight to the police without giving us a warning or even just informing us that he had a problem with the playroom. I was infuriated, but I knew the boys were watching from the living room, so I kept my cool and informed the officer about the situation. I offered to show him the playhouse and how it's necessary for my son. He had noticed Ryan and Timmy in the living room, so he knew I was telling the truth. He looked uncomfortable and almost guilty about having to do this. When he saw the physical rehab facilities inside the playroom, he decided that it was in fact a medical requirement. The officer was just about to leave when Hanson's head popped up from behind our shared backyard fence. He began ranting about how the construction is a disturbance to everyone in the neighborhood and how it is basically illegal since we had not taken permission prior to construction. I informed the officer that we had in fact mailed the HOA twice regarding this but received no response. It was important for Ryan's development that we begin his rehabilitation at the earliest, so we did not bother waiting any longer for a response. He told Hanson that this clearly is not a problem to anyone, since the construction is also complete. He threatened to take Hanson down to the station if he didn't stop calling for such irrelevant matters. That's how I learned that him calling the police for the silliest matters was a common occurrence and that even the police department was sick of him. Once the officer left, we returned to painting the walls. Hanson showed up once more and threatened to take us to court over this. I asked him to go ahead because I was confident we would win. The Playhouse followed the standards of a backyard treehouse, which meant it was a temporary construction that did not violate any laws and did not require prior permission. When the HOA actually took us to court stating we had constructed a part on Hanson's property since we shared the same fence, we still managed to win the lawsuit. We countersued them for discrimination and violation of the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. The Homeowner Association had to pay us roughly $139,000. The money really helped to add more features to Ryan's Playhouse. We were able to expand it and make it a safe haven for all the specially abled kids in the area. The HOA did not dare to mess with the Playhouse ever again. And yeah, RipeStars, I gotta say, that has to be one of the most stupid HOAs we have ever come across, because clearly everyone knows you never mess with the ADA, at least in America. I'm not sure if there are any powerful equivalents in other countries, but that is one thing I really like about the USA. The ADA seems very powerful, and if you mess with that, you are certainly in trouble. Anyway, if you enjoyed this story, then please don't forget to like the video, and now let's move on to the next HOA story. This one is titled, HOA banned me from public pool for wearing a bikini. Police undercover stings gets half of HOA arrested. So when I was a teenager, the neighborhood my mom and I lived in was a genuinely nice neighborhood. Do you know those neighborhoods where every house looks the same? You need a code to get past the gate and all the neighbors were friendly? Well, yes, it was that kind of neighborhood. It was great except for the fact that it was an HOA neighborhood. Now, everyone knows how annoying and pesky HOAs can be, but usually only the adults have to deal with them, right? Well, no, wrong. So here is the story. Our neighborhood had a nice pool area that we loved to hang out in. There was an unofficial board posted at the pool gate that listed all of the rules. These rules were pretty standard for a pool, such as people under the age of 15 must be accompanied by an adult, no swimming if you are sick, etc. And like any normal person when we went to the pool, we wore our bathing suits. This was never a problem, as you know, it should not be because we were swimming in a pool. But well, one day I invited my friends over and a couple of us plus my mom went to the pool. Again, we were wearing bikinis because that's normal. We did notice one of the well-known board members of the HOA there, and she was wearing some swimming shorts and a tank top. I am mentioning this because just 2 days after our pool day, we got a notice in the mail from the HOA saying that we were violating the rules for our swimsuits. The letter stated that it is against HOA rules to wear anything provocative to the pool. I thought since the HOA board member we saw was dressed modestly, she complained about our two-piece bikinis. So the next time we went to the pool, we wore one-pieces. My mom even wore shorts over her swimsuit. I really thought that this was a dumb rule and the HOA was getting bored, so they were trying to produce new rules they could fine people on. I don't know, but it just seems that nothing good ever came out of the HOA. Well, to much of our surprise, we got yet another notice in the mail stating that our bathing suits were absolutely too risque and official rules would be put in place soon to prevent risky business from happening at the pool. Now, at this point in time, I was actually young. However, even I was weirded out by this letter. What risky business? We were kids having fun in the pool and our mom was watching us. But well, soon we would find out what was up with the weird behavior and rules. My mom wrote a letter back and kindly asked the HOA to please explain how our bathing suits were provocative. She also told them that we were in high school swimming team, only I was, not my friend, and that it was necessary for us to be in proper swimwear when swimming. The HOA could not give my mom a direct answer and instead just kept insisting that our swimsuits were provocative. The more I think about it now, the more I realize it is weird because we were kids. I was like 16, 17 at the time, so if they thought I was being provocative, it was their problem. Keep in mind, this happened in the spring. There was about a 2 to 3 week period where the pool was closed because they were getting it ready for the summer. When the pool reopened, there were even more new rules. The new rules were absolutely ridiculous. They made it literally impossible for younger people, you know, like me and my friends, to use the pool. The rules were so crazy and hard to follow that the pool became a hangout for all the old people in the neighborhood. Well, one of the neighborhood moms found a way around all of these rules and got her kids into the pool. And guess what? There were several older ladies wearing provocative swimwear. Now this is where the story gets really interesting. One of the HOA members found a way to kick them out of the pool, and of course the mom was absolutely furious. She thought that something was going on and started talking with the other neighborhood moms, including mine, to figure out exactly what. Why all of a sudden the younger people in the neighborhood could not use the pool? Why were they making it so difficult? Well, upon investigation, several neighborhood moms found out that there was a swinger club in our neighborhood and they were using the pool as a meetup. And yes, they were using the pool as a place to participate in lewd acts. And what's even more shocking, or not at this point, is that most of the swinger club members were board members from the HOA. When the group of moms found this out, they were able to contact the police and set up an undercover sting to catch them in the act. Not surprisingly, half of the HOA ended up getting arrested for public indecency, and most of the remaining HOA members voluntarily quit because they were ashamed to be associated with them. Because of all of this, the entire HOA board ended up getting restructured, but that came with some good things. The pool was now able to be used again after a good cleaning, of course, and I learned that when I grew up I would never purchase a home that was part of the HOA. And the next one is titled Neighbor Poisoned My Garden. So we moved into our new house in January of this year. There is a side yard of grass and sod that belongs to our property that separates my house from my neighbor. Everything seemed great when we moved in until I planted a small raised vegetable garden in the side yard. The only place in the yard with enough sun to grow veggies. The elderly neighbor was unhappy that I had pulled up the grass and said she was gonna get my husband on me. My husband loves my garden and the fresh veggies we get from it daily. My neighbor was quiet for a few months, happily accepted any produce I offered her. But then out of the blue she called code enforcement on my garden saying it was full of dead plants. Code enforcement came out, saw a garden with no dead plants and tons of melons and peppers and laughed. Said that I was not violating code and my garden looked great. Neighbor was not happy that code enforcement did not make me remove my garden, so she proceeded to trespass on my property and mow over all my watermelon and cantaloupe vines, destroying all the not yet ripe melons. I approached her and told her not to trespass or mow on my property anymore. She turned away and walked off without saying anything and continued to mow on my property. The next day I go to throw some trash in the outside bin and I see the neighbor on my property spreading poison in my organic veggie garden. I started filming her, told her to stop, and she continued. That night both of my dogs got very sick with vomiting and diarrhea. They had been in my fenced backyard only, not near the front where she was videotaped spreading poison, so I called the cops. They came and talked with her, told her she could not come on my property. She screamed and had a fit at me in front of the cop. The neighbor also smiled when I mentioned the dogs getting sick. The cops saw her smile and told me to immediately get cameras put up everywhere as my animals did not appear to be safe in my yard. I did not press charges as I just want her to stop and leave me alone. However, she is continuing to trespass on my property, which was all caught on video. She literally walked past the no trespassing sign to mow 4 to 5 inches on my property. My husband wants to let it go. I fear for my 2-year-old daughter's safety and for the safety of my 2 dogs. She is blatantly disregarding the orders of the police officer. I'm a wreck over all this. I'm gonna have to remove all the poisoned soil and remediate the ground. All of my other neighbors have been super supportive of my plight and tell me not to back down to her bullying attempts. What should I do? Update to the story. Thank you for the thoughts. I'll be going to the police station tomorrow to press charges. Update number 2. Quick update from me. This is now a few months after all of this happened and the neighbor mentioned to become even more crazy. She ended up driving her car through my garden and then threatened me with an axe. I now finally got a restraining order against her. Thanks Reddit. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you have ever lived next to a crazy neighbor yourself, then please feel free to share your own story either in the comments or on r/RipeStories on Reddit. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is titled Wrong Number. Many years ago, I started a job and in my department was a young lady who was a loudmouthed, rude, crude, bad-tempered and nasty Karen. She was really just a Karen. I'm sure some of you have come across one of these people in your life. Anyway, back then there was no caller ID on the phones like today. I decided one day after hearing her yell again at someone to pick up the phone and call her. She sat on the other side of the office, but I could hear her and see her pick up the phone. When she picked up the phone, I quietly just hung up. I would turn the volume down on my speakerphone and have the mute button on while I dialed. When I would hang up, it was just a matter of me silently clicking it off. When this would happen, I could hear her yell, "Damn it," over and over again. Damn it. I would do this like 3 or 4 times a day. Sometimes I would get up and go to the fax machine and dial her from there to deflect any suspicion. Damn it, I would hear. I would suffer in silence as I tried and succeeded in suppressing my laughter. One day I saw the only friend I had in the office get into a fight with her. "I just hate that Karen," he told me. I decided to let him in my mini world of revenge. He started to do it as well. She would scream, "Damn it, who's doing that?" and look around the room. My buddy and I just kept working and she couldn't figure out who her wrong number phone stalker in the room was. He would do the fax trick as well. When I finally quit my job, I would call her like once a week and prank her 3 or 4 times in a row. My friend would call me and say, "Dude, was that you? She is so pissed, she's going crazy." And proceeded to tell me that she was screaming all over the place like a crazy woman and that management had been called on her various times. Of course we would laugh about it. A couple of years later I get called into an office meeting and a supervisor asks me if I know a person from my previous job who was applying for a job at my current company. It was her and she was in the other room. I go to meet her and there she was, a broken woman. She was somehow different. I told her if she wants a job here, she cannot do the same stuff that she pulled off in the other place, and if she ever does, I have the power to fire her. She proceeds to tell me that she had realized that she had been overbearing and that she had a real talk down by her former boss and that she had learned to control her anger. So believe it or not, I gave the go-ahead and gave her the job, and yes, she did change. People loved her at the new job and she was a productive and good employee. And wow, Ripe Stars, that is definitely an ending I did not anticipate. Definitely huge props and respect to the OP for doing that. If I was in his position, I'm not sure if I could have done the same, honestly. The next one is titled 2 for 1. So, a few weeks back I sort of got a 2-for-1 deal on revenge, but to explain how, I need to give a little backstory. The first one is about an a-hole I met in college, a-hole classmate. He was in my major, he was the laziest dude ever. Our department was lacking students, so they allowed him into the program to avoid budget cuts. Anyone unfortunate enough to get stuck with a-hole classmate on a group project was pretty much doomed to do the whole project themselves. It was a project built for a group of people to complete in a month. Being in his group was an automatic C. He never did work and in my case managed to lose all of our work after taking it home to copy it. Despite contributing literally nothing, he felt entitled to put his name on the project and display it in his portfolio. If he was not allowed to get his way, we stopped letting him sign his name on our projects. He failed senior and junior year, he badmouthed you and threatened to call all of your future employers. My senior year at that school, I got a job in my field. It was honestly just a crappy job that was marginally better than the unpaid externships we are expected to do. I had a crappy boss, a-hole boss. He had me do all the dumb office stuff like make him coffee and complain that I was bad at it. I don't even drink coffee. He was the typical spoiled brat son inheriting a company from his dad. He was fond of reminding me that if he knew how to use the software and the tools I did, he could also do my job and that he was learning how so that he could get rid of my position. And now on to the revenge. I am out of school and I got a much better job offer, so I politely told him to bugger off. Of course I got fired for insubordination, but I get that sweet unemployment pay until my next job kicks in. He fired me at an inconvenient time for his company. Their biggest company is expecting prototypes from us, 4 of them, no one knows how to do them aside from me, their customer will be there in 3 weeks, and in a panic, nice supervisor asks if I know anyone that can do the job. I check Facebook and a whole classmate is still unemployed. I tell him to apply. He thanks me profusely, nice supervisor thanks me profusely as well. A whole classmate goes to the interview with a whole boss, proceeds to badmouth me, claims he carried me the whole way in college. I check his online portfolio and my projects are on there with my watermark still on them. A whole boss hires him. Their customer comes in 1 week from today, nothing has been done. A whole classmate calls in sick too much, nice supervisor calls me to tell me that she is quitting because a whole boss is taking out his anger on everyone. A whole classmate complains that no one appreciates him, that customer has been waiting for that prototype for 3 months. He is over 70% of their current business and he is not happy with them. They will possibly go out of business because of this. Also, I got my friend who is an attorney to send a whole classmate a cease and desist letter to make my work off of his portfolio. I posted that letter as well as screenshots of him stealing my work on our field's professional network. Good luck getting a job now.